This is a short video about the process used by Franco Donatoni in his 1979 piece Nidi for solo piccolo. Essentially what he has here is one piece of material, half a dozen bars long, where he keeps repeating it and he uses a set of rule systems. You can call these automatons. So these rule systems transform the base material in each different section, and each time he then repeats that section and he transforms it again and repeats it and transforms it again. In this piece there's also an additional thing where each section gets 11 BPM faster each time, so you get this balance between the increasing line lengths, which happen because he's adding pitches sometimes, but that's a specific point. How you can use this is just to watch out for the way he comes up with these rules and uses them, but mostly they're fairly simple. They fall under headings of some sort of replacement, taking something that's in the previous version and replacing it with something else, additions or subtractions, types of transpositions, etc. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So this is his initial material. Apologies that his notation is not terribly clear, but essentially what you have here is three pitches, F natural, G flat and D, and you'll see all the way through that these are all the only pitches that are used: G flat, F, D, G flat, F, D, etc. Sometimes there are grace notes, these, but otherwise all of the durations are just quavers. Sometimes there are rests, quite a few actually. Altogether, there's this very limited set of materials, and it's all quite quiet, triple P always with these small crescendos, which I should point out, when you're doing your piece, please include a notation of what dynamic this is going up to, but we'll forgive old Franco. So you have this very limited set of material. There's only three pitches, there's only essentially two duration types: metric quavers and grace notes, then rests of varying lengths. So how does he get from this to the next section? So the next to get from here to the next one, he takes this, he repeats it, but to repeat it he also has a set of transformation rules, and here's how he does it. So to get to section 2 he has a bunch of rules, and what I've done here is shown you section 1 and section 2 how they change. So the first rule is that grace notes in the first version become full notes. So there was a grace note D there, now it's a full quaver. There was a grace note G flat there, now it's a full quaver. It also looks like it's turned into a sharp, but I don't think it has. In yellow you'll see places where new grace notes are added in this order. There's a specific order which they come in. I'm not sure exactly where they get added, but they do get added. There's probably a reason for it. So this one's a B flat, the next one's a G. You don't see the next one here, but the next one, if it did come up, would be an E and then a B, etc. Actually, yeah, there's the E, there's the B, and we're back to a G again. There may have been an A flat somewhere that I just didn't notice. And the last rule is that isolated notes gain a trill or a mordant. As I mentioned in class the other day, I'm not a huge fan of this use of Baroque types of ornamentations, but again, that's what he chose to do in this piece. You can see as well that it's got faster this time, but like I said, that's a kind of separate compositional gambit that's not really related to this transform system. So his three sets of rules means he takes that whole opening section, which is of course longer than this, and it becomes section 2, which is this. Section 3, again we're going from section 1 through to section 2, through to section 3. Anything that was originally a quaver now becomes a semi-quaver. So you can see there, these were quavers there, they've turned into semi-quavers. This just became a quaver in section 2, turned from a grace note into a quaver, so it stays as a quaver. Anything that was a quaver stays quaver, but they do get louder, goes from PP up to P, etc. Grace notes become runs, so anywhere there was a run, that now becomes anywhere there was a grace note, such as there, that now becomes this run of notes, and you can see if you compare the various different ones that there's a sequence that moves through it. So in this case, the grace note was a B flat, So that starts there in the sequence and moves on. So B flat or A sharp in this case to B to E to G. The next grace note, the grace note was an E. So that starts with the E and then goes to G, A flat, B flat, etc. And later on in the section, anything that was a trill becomes high E flat grace notes, which takes us into section 4. There's our high E flat, high E flat notes. And now my analysis starts to fall apart because it becomes more difficult to see what the transforms are, but the piece goes on and on. Here's the opening page of it, and an interesting thing to listen to, and I'll put the audio file up online as well, is that you can still hear the shadow of this F, G flat, D. That set of pitches is in there, and as the piece goes on, while it gets more and more complex as it's going on here, it also starts to step back to these, so there are later points in the piece where you can hear this material come back again, even though it's greatly changed. What you can try and do is try and do the same kind of thing, come up with a few lines of basic material and try and limit it, try and keep it down to a few separate pitches or a couple of specific note types, and then you could even apply exactly the same types of rules as he has, something like this, and just see what happens, and then go back in or change those rules to make them suit something you want, etc. But this can be a really nice way to have a set of material that gradually transforms into something else.